Yes, I do. I wonder, that just popped up that said we were unmuted. So if you didn't hear what we just said, it was a wonderful statement that the both of us had talking about April Fool's Day. I think we've shown you this disclaimer long enough and done it in silence that you can quit watching that. So
this is what we get
was,
when we have no one to Zoom with to tell us what we're doing wrong.
Yeah, usually you do that for me, I think. So that's a wonderful thing. Welcome. We are thankful to hang out with you today and to update you on what in the world is going on in our vantage point of things. And so today, I thought I would kick off with the markets a little bit and cover a little bit of ground and have offer some opinions. I do have opinions. I intend to share some of those on a regular basis as long as they're neglected by the powers that be. So I am going to quickly share my screen. This is just my regular little chart of the number of stocks in our database, 95, 94. That's a new high. They added 10 new companies since last time. There are 2,865 of those below their 21-day moving average, 4,069 below their 50-day moving average, and still 5,550 below the 200-day. So the bulk of them are still below that kind of important 200-day to say you're kind of in an upward trend for maybe the long haul, but we've kind of broke the ice of a couple of weeks ago when everything was below their moving averages there. So the markets for picking up on the short term, they're swinging upwards, and hopefully we'll see in the days ahead those longer term trends beginning to reignite going forward. Give you some pictures of the markets to talk you through those.
Before you share, make sure those mutual funds down there are hidden, because those are dangerous to see.
I cannot let you see things that might influence your thoughts.
Even if we're not recommending them, the fact that we're looking at them seems to be taken as a recommendation.
There's that 1980s song. It always seems like somebody's watching me. So here we go. Let's start with the S&P 500. These are the quasi 500 largest publicly traded companies in the United States. That's roughly what it is. We had some pretty dramatic selling going on in the first quarter. We switch this over to a temporary line. We hit a low here in January. It retested that low here in February, tried to back here in March, and then we finally saw some buying. These blue lines right here are the buying that came into the market, which we really needed. And we've talked about earlier, we said the 20-day moving average, the 50-day is the red, and the black is the 200-day. And that 200-day is kind of the critical thing. You can see the trend of this is upward. It was starting to flatten out and had the risk of trending downward with the market taking such a volatile hit in the first quarter. We'll see how if it can hold this 200-day moving average. That's what we're hopeful for to really reignite this rally in the market. You can see the same thing in the, NASDAQ. Same idea. The only thing that happened with the NASDAQ is that the sell-off was much more violent. It broke through that 200-day, and you can see this week when it tried to rally to get above it, like the S&P did earlier, that it just didn't have any luck getting above that 200-day moving average. And so that's what's going on in the tech stocks. That's what's going on the large companies. And I'll give you one more picture of the smaller companies. The S&P 600 are some of the smallest companies out there, and it kind of started struggling right here in about late October, where it hit a high, and then it dropped and gave up the 200-day moving average gradually here in the end of the year, and then just came plowing through it towards the January timeframe, and then finally it got up to it this week and then bounced back off of it. But it's hopeful that maybe we've kind of got a trend that's starting upward on this, and it may be able to overtake that 200-day moving average before too long. So we remain optimistic. We're still cautious, and we are making acquisitions of opportunities we think make sense in the market today. So if you got questions about what's going on in the market, we are happy to talk about that with you. What do you got on your mind, Amanda?
Well, I think we were going to talk about maybe what I learned what some of the personal finance things that we talked about in my childhood and my family house growing up. And you asked me that this morning, and I rambled off a lot of saving. My mom was just like, save, 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 save. But the more I pondered it, what she really was boiling down to is just live within your means. That's been a big thing that my family taught us, my sister and I, and it's voted fairly well. I mean, it's just important to do that.
And my experience over helping people over all the years is that there's people that are innately born as spenders and innately born as savers. And so those who are savers do that much more easily than spenders. If you happen to be a spender, you know how hard it is to avoid that next new shiny thing. Mm-hmm. And so that temptation to spend more than what you have can be problematic. But what kind of created this conversation for us is we try to give, when we find out families are having newborns, we try to give them gifts, and we've historically used a lot of onesies for the new babies. But the latest thing we've got from M.A. Hadley is a piggy bank, and they did a marvelous job. It's a pottery company based in Louisville. If you're ever down there, it's kind of a fun place to visit. They put the Gimbal logo on the side of the pig. The normal ones just have the blue dots, but they catered to our demands in a very positive way. So the latest thing we have for newborns is a piggy bank, which is kind of an ironic thing because a few weeks ago, Eric and you were educating me how you don't use money anymore. So I don't know how we put crypto or anything in these things. One of the things that led to me doing a little bit of research was this piggy bank is not at all like the ones that you can buy at the bank or at the stores, because there's no rubber kind of seal here to pop it open on the bottom. So I did a little research on piggy banks, and you'll be surprised to know they've been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. They were first developed in Indonesia. They go back over 600 years, and they were originally put in terracotta clay jars. So like you may, I used to put money in my ashtray in my car. I don't have an ashtray anymore. Quit smoking years ago. Just kidding. Not one of my habits, but I have a jar at home. I throw pocket change in if I get it, and it accumulates. So that's basically what the ancient people did with these terracotta pots. They didn't have a lot of wealth, and there weren't banks at that point in time to put your money in. So the terracotta pot served for that, and it was called a PYGG, and that was pronounced pug. The Y did not get the is sound until many years later, and then it became known as the PYGG pig container. And PYGG was a form of mud or clay that they made to terracotta, so it blended well for a piggy bank, which evolved a few months or years later. And the original ones did not have the plug in the bottom. Okay. The original ones, you would just bust those bad boys open to get to the cash inside.
You told me you finagled that when you were younger, when yours didn't have a little plug at the bottom either.
Yeah, so if there is a newborn who gets one of these things and they get to that point where they put money in there and they are anxious to break it to get to that money, have them call me. I can help them navigate that.
I would just hate for that little bit piggy bank to be broken. I just think it's so cute.
Well, to help update you on the history of these bad boys, very few, if any, Indonesian banks survived till today because you had to bust them. And a Japanese unbroken piggy bank, which is very rare, sold for over $10,000 not too long ago. So that's where piggy banks came from. And the idea of a bank was prior to there actually being a thing called a bank where you go down to the corner and they try to loan you money for your vacation or whatever. Prior to that, the Lombardis in Italy they were the first lenders, and they had a bench that they would sit on to negotiate loans and prices of loans with people. And that word bench is where the word bank came from. So a piggy bank came from terracotta pots to Italian lenders, probably charging usury rates, if I had to guess. So there you have it. That's the piggy bank. So Amanda learned to save. I learned just to keep some of what you earn and to give some of what you earn away. And to also, the reason to save was to save for things. Like not
That
just
makes
to
sense.
save, but to save for things. And the very first loan I got myself into was for a 10-speed bike.
Ooh.
And that 10-speed bike was wonderful, but making those monthly payments, I don't even know what they were, $5 a month, $10 a month, became burdensome to me. And that's where I kind of learned to not care much about loans. That was a young version of me. And my thought was, what do you all teach your kids about money? Because, or your grandkids, because I don't think that the education system really does that. So if it doesn't happen in the four walls of a house, I'm not sure how those ideas get propagated
Teach them
into the
about
future.
taxes. Teach them. The most important thing I've learned, like as an adult, is like you need to learn how to spend your money. Like you said, save it for something. I just never got there.
Amanda,
I'm still learning.
was it Uncle McScrooge? Is that what was his name? Do you know that name, Amanda? Let's see.
I don't know the Uncle McScrooge. I know Scrooge.
Yeah, let me see if I can find him and share him with the world here.
It's a bit of a conundrum too, because I'm probably at heart a spender. So I've got a lot of contradicting traumas going on.
Oh, there's the one I know of him. Let's see if I can get this picture to share with everybody. Is that as big as they're gonna let me? Here we go. I'm gonna share this with y'all because if you don't know McScrooge, this is worth seeing him. So the purpose for McScrooge to save his money was so he could ski downhill on it here and just pile it up and have more and more of it. So that's kind of what you were saying, all right?
A little bit, yeah.
You didn't really have a purpose for it, and that can become problematic with your money, I think, as well.
Until you become an adult. Actually.
And then everybody wants your money when you become an adult, right? Like, give me. Yeah. So yeah, I think if I were going to teach youngsters, I would teach them, how to save, even if it's just a little bit.
Yeah.
Teach them how taxes work. That's you can go over their piggy bank and shake out some of their money. This is for the tax man. This is your rent. So we teach them what taxes are, so they can get appreciation for that. I would teach them the benefit of work. There's a lot of benefits of work we can talk about another time, but I would teach them the benefit of work and hard work. I wrote down, I'd teach them to how to spend. And I think just to realize that you can't even really control money. Money is a fluid thing, kind of like trying to control water. Sometimes you think you can control it, but sometimes more of it comes at you or less of it than what you need. And so money can work much like that, where you could have really challenging times, and just knowing how to navigate through those can be really important for people. So that's the piggy banks. If you know somebody in the Gimbal family of clients and friends that needs a piggy bank for a newborn, let us know. We were happy to share. I have to go over pointing fingers again this week. Somebody that watched last week said Keith sounded like he had an attitude last week. And I do have opinions, because in our disclaimer, it shows that these are our opinions. So hopefully you tune in to catch a little bit of that. But I saw this this week, and it was a bit annoying to me. Click the wrong button here. And this headline here says, from 5 fewer Doritos to shrunken Gatorade bottles, here are the insidious ways companies are charging the same amount for less stuff. And this tweet from the Retail Insider is suggesting that the companies are the problem of inflation. These are simply the ways that companies historically have always had to respond to the irresponsible leadership of state, local, and federal governments that have created inflation. And consequently, companies, if they're going to remain in business, have to react, because if their cost of goods sold goes up to the point they're not profitable, then they go out of business. And so as those cost of goods go up because of governments and Federal Reserve System, central banks incorrectly managing things, then inflation finds its way to all of us. And the U.S., most of the research I've been doing in the U.S. has their central bank has increased the money supply more than anybody else in the world by 40% over the last couple of years. And another thing that governments don't do properly, and this picture of me recently on a trip to Florida, is they don't spend money well. It's a lot easier to spend your money than it is to spend mine. And so this is the smallest post office in the United States,
Wow.
down near the Everglades. That's my daughter Casey and myself on a recent training meeting. And it looks like Jerry Garcia to me that's working the postal system, and nothing against Jerry there, but my guess is we do not need that post office, that somehow a truck parked in a parking lot for a fixed amount of hours would replace a person that gets paid probably a pretty nice salary by the color of that beard and the cost of maintaining that little building there. But a government won't get rid of that because it's not their money.
Is it being maintained?
It doesn't look like it's being maintained. So there you have it. And but I just need to point out that inflation is created not by the companies. Companies have to respond. If companies created inflation, they could raise the price of their goods all the time,
Right.
or give you less services, and they can't do that because competition will come in around, smack them around and tell them, we'll take your business if you don't want it. So there you go. There's my weekly. As long as inflation stays there, I'm going to pout about it with my friends who are with us today. So I was going to do a lesson today, and I'm going to let you own this. We're going to call this a stock. It's called the $2 stock.
Can you see this? It is a $2 bill.
Yeah. And so what I was going to teach you is that people believe because a stock does what's called a split, that's a good thing
Wow.
for shareholders. And we're going to give an example of a split right here. I'm going to take her $2 stock and give it a split. And now she has two $1 stocks, and nothing has changed in the value of her stocks. And that's the exact same thing that happens with a stock split. It does not add any value to shareholders. It just changes the accounting and the price that you see in the marketplace. So that was the best way I could think about it. I saw that one of the meme stocks was doing a split, and everybody got excited and ran the price up, and it's for no apparent reason because nothing changed.
Still got $2.
You have $2 and I have $2. So there you have it. So that's a stock split for you. Let's see here. I think I've covered most of the things I wanted to share with you. I had one other idea I wanted to throw out. Before I jump into that, Amanda, was there something you had on your mind today?
Just a quick thing. I got a lot of education on used cars and buying cars yesterday. And the whole thing about inflation is very prevalent, where prices of cars are going up and inventory is way down. And so I was fortunate enough to buy a car yesterday that I had actually leased in 2019. So it doesn't always work out to lease, not always. You got to work your math and stuff. But in 2019, no one would have predicted what was going to happen in 2020 and beyond. But my lease buyout worked out greatly in my favor, where I was able to buy my car for almost 10 grand less than what I could buy it on the used car market today. So another thing that I learned was just the dealership where I bought it from. Typically they have about 200 cars that come in per month, and they're lucky to get like between 30 and 50 new cars, just with the production of cars not being what they used to be. And a lot of people are ordering cars, so even the cars that they get in are already accounted for. So it's a really weird time.
I would say if you know anybody that's got a car that's on lease, is that you might even, if they don't understand the math of it, have them give us a call and we can talk them through that, because it clearly doesn't make sense to just turn it back over if you can put $10,000 back in your pocket by keeping it. So it's a good opportunity. It's a good word, Amanda. I appreciate that. I guess if I was going to talk about the insidious way that retailers or people are taking advantage of consumers with inflation, one thing, rather than raising the price of your car, they could just take one of the tires off of it, like they were saying about the Doritos, so you could buy it. Yeah. So anyway, that whole process of what you described is just like the Doritos. They couldn't raise the price of Doritos if the market wasn't demanding that and or requiring that. So there you have it. That's inflation in a lot of different ways out there. What I was thinking about as next couple of weeks is when your taxes are due, and there's a flow of money that becomes part of the process of as people retire or consider retire. You have different buckets of money. You have tax deferred buckets, tax free buckets like Roth accounts, you have taxable accounts, and you may even have physical possessions. But with those resources, where do you get the cash flow for the needs that you have while you are retired? And maybe even when you're not retired, if Amanda needs some cash today, where do you get that money? And there really aren't any rules for that. When I was in my early 30s, I was compelled to pay off my house, and I only had one place to get that money, and that was an IRA. And by choosing to take money out of my IRA and pay the extra 10% in taxes on that, I got lectured by my accountant as though I didn't understand the math behind it. And so just because you have tax deferred, tax free, or taxable assets and physical assets doesn't mean there's a right way to withdraw money for every single person. Your unique personality, your unique needs, your unique dreams, all of those things filter into the thought process of where is the best way to get money. And that's what Gimbal does. We will help you think through your situation, navigate where you're at, what you're trying to accomplish, and make some suggestions from our opinions that are strictly ours. So anyway, I thought about that because I think the variables that might affect where you get money flow or cash flow for your needs might be your family status. Somebody that is a single individual, say, that doesn't have any heirs, there's not as much need to preserve a Roth IRA because there's not anybody that's in your bloodline that you're really needing to benefit with tax-free money. So if you find yourself in a single position with not a lot of heirs, the tax deferred might work better for you. If you're wanting, say you're married and you're built up a Roth account and you're wanting that maybe to last for your heirs, well, the tax law changes a couple years ago eliminate the possibility of them doing what's called a stretch IRA if it's a non-spousal beneficiary. So suppose you had a Roth IRA and your intent was that your children would have that once you and your spouse passed away, that money has to be out of that Roth account 10 years after the last of the two of you pass away. And so it gives those beneficiaries some time to appreciate that tax-free growth. But another alternative to doing that might be, if that's what your ultimate intent is, consider taking the annual maximum amount that you can give, that a child can put in a Roth, take that out of your Roth IRA because there's no taxes on that, give it to the child to fund their own Roth IRA. And if you do that over a consistent period of time, it gets that out of your state, puts it in their Roth account, which doesn't have the required minimum distribution during their lifetime or their spouses. So it's a way to accomplish the same thing. But again, thinking about where do you get distributions? Health can cause some other things. If health becomes problematic, or there's some problems with health, there's some strategies we can help you think through on that. And even your perception of the future can affect where you want to get money. Yeah. If you think tax rates are going up, you would probably want to deplete your taxable and tax-free or tax-deferred accounts maybe before you would touch your tax-free account. So there's a lot of things that can go into the idea of where do you distribute money from. There's not really a specific answer for everyone that's broad across the board, but there's a unique one that probably meets the needs of you and your family and your loved ones. So that was on my mind today as I was thinking about the deadline for contributing to your Roth accounts is the 18th of this month. And if you've not done that and you're eligible to, it's probably a good place to transfer money, because if you've got the money to fund it, or if your family members have the money to fund it and they're just leaving it set in a checking account, that's a taxable asset. And if they can shift it over into the Roth account, they've taken an asset that is taxable every year and made it potentially for the rest of their lives tax-free, which is kind of a big deal. So a lot of thoughts go into those things. We're here to offer creative ideas to help you look to the future with great hope and enjoy the prosperity of being an American. What else do we need to touch on today, Amanda?
That's it.
Doug's on spring break. Hopefully you'll get to see him again here in a couple of weeks. I'm going to be traveling next week, but I think I might join Eric. I think Eric and I might host you guys next week with some creative thoughts. I do I talked about this COVID test last week, and the spend less than you make, the save version of me just hates to let this thing go to waste. So if you know anybody that needs a COVID test, we'll put it out on the front porch. We don't need to see them, but we can sure give this to them. But if you have any ideas for my COVID test, let me know. I appreciate it. You guys have a great weekend. Pull a prank on somebody today and smile big. We'll see you.